Hello and welcome to another episode of Metal Effort. My name's Nehemiah, and today we're going to be looking at this piece of metal, the Kizer Feist. This is on loan from Nick Shabazz, thank you very much. And it's an interesting little EDC knife. I really like small knives, medium knives, and big knives, depending on the situation. This is definitely in the small knives category. We've got our gigantic PM2 for size comparison, as well as our Para 3. So it's smaller than both these knives by quite a margin. Let's get a measurement in for you, just so you can get an idea exactly how big this sucker is. Cutting edge, we're at like 2.75. Blade going to the shoulder is maybe, 2.8, 2.9, somewhere in there. So small little knife. We'll also do a weigh-in, looking at 2.6 ounces, right around there, which is definitely a good size, perfect for EDC. So no complaints in the weight department. Now let's get into our dent, the decent, the excellent, the nitpicks, and the terrible of this piece of metal. In the decent, I'd like to talk about a few things. I like this blade shape. This blade shape is like a classic, kind of sheep's foot type design. Just enough of a little clip point thing going on to where you can stab a little bit if you need to. It's not going to be the best stabber in the world, mind you, but better than some sheep's foot, which can be pretty difficult. But this is very effective. It's not too thick. It's pretty thin stock, even though it's not a very tall blade. It cuts really well. It's a good little EDC, a little slicer. Need to cut into an apple, you can. It doesn't feel awkward or weird. So blade shape I like. Blade stock I like. And, this is Kizer. They like to print a bunch of stuff on here. So we've got, Justin Lundquist, we've got Feist W on here, we've got Kizer, we have all their crazy print. So there's a lot of stuff going on the blade. I keep talking about this over and over and over again. It's not a big deal. It's totally aesthetic. It's not like it's affecting the cutting too much, although you can feel the print. And depending on what you're cutting into, could give you a little bit of friction. But for the most part, there's no effective difference on having that junk on there. I just don't aesthetically like it. And as much as I'd like to think that I'm a completely utilitarian person, what something looks like and how it performs do need to combine well. Having said that, I do like the clean look on the actual handle. So got some milling stuff going on here. Obviously, it's going to help out a little bit with the weight, give it a little bit of visual flair, but no other printing on the handle or anything else billboardy on the handle. So not too bad. As far as ergonomics, this is definitely in the decent, not the excellent. For such a small knife, it fits pretty well. It's definitely not something I would want to use long term. But, for the little EDC tasks that most knives will see use on, this will do the trick just fine. Not an issue. Next thing I like is this clip. The clip is pretty straightforward, easy to get into. It's not super deep carry per se, but the knife is so small that, how much is actually sticking out of your pocket is pretty minimal. So, it's like a B minus as far as clip goes. Another positive thing I'll always point out, there is no stupid lanyard hole on this knife, which will always get bonus points for me. Personally, I don't think they should be on knives, but I do understand some people like them. Let's make some knives without them and some with them, and let people choose and use their money and their wallet to vote. Ooh, what a crazy idea. So I like that. Another thing I like is just a steel. This is S35EN, which is, becoming kind of the common super steel, kind of supplanting S35V, S30V in many circles. I think, Spyderco is still firmly in the S30V category, but S35VN is getting on more and more of the China manufacturers, as well as some U.S. makers. But that's just really, a good steel and something I'm not going to complain about on something like this. Another thing I like about this knife is just the fit and finish. Fit and finish is pretty decent. It's centered. Everything that should be chamfered is chamfered. Nothing was loose. It's a solid built knife. Very, very competent. well executed as far as the manufacturing goes on this. So, we're getting used to seeing production knives out of China, especially, be really good. But I don't want to skip over the fact that it's actually pretty difficult to achieve that on a regular basis. So whenever it does happen, well, I want to give it props. So good job, Kizer. Another thing I like is the action. Action is decent on this. It's not amazeballs. This is a front flipper. So front flippers, you do have to get kind of used to them. I've had a couple now, 3 I think, and each one I'm getting a little bit more competent with it. It's something usable here. It works pretty well. If you get it down right, it can open up. It's not like, if I'm just judging the actual action, it's not amazing. I've definitely, any random Wii knife is going to have better action than this, I feel like. But it works. It does the job. It deploys most of the time. And it's not super awkward. It doesn't eat up your finger. So, given it's so difficult to get a front flipper down right, I think they achieved what they were trying to do on the front flipper, so I'll give them props for that. In the excellent section, really, I don't have anything beyond just like the form factor of this, that it's so small, that this isn't going to be intimidating to anybody. It's very easy to carry in your pocket. There's just a lot of like, this is in your pocket and you're not going to notice it there. It's there. And when you do need it, you can just whip it out and get done what's need doing. So I think, just filling the role of a small EDC blade, it did that. And, no flipper tab hanging off the end, no, crazy lanyard hole making the pocket, have a knife sticking out of it or anything like that. It's kind of a boring thing to put in the excellent, just the size of a knife. But if that's what you're looking for, I think this fits the bill really, really well. It reminds me a lot of like the Shamwari, the 3-inch Shamwari I had. It's a little bit bigger than that, but just very small, very minimalistic kind of a knife. Not a lot of frills, but it just does what it needs to do. It's reliable and it's a joy to carry. Now let's get into the nitpicks. I've got a few. So one thing this could be in my terrible, but we'll see, because I know I'm more picky on this than most. So in action, I have 3 things that I'm looking for. The open, we've already talked about, and this is competent. It can open just fine. The other 2 things that I'm looking for is how easy is it to disengage, and then how fall shutty is it. The fall shutty is like, if I had a neutral section, it would be right there, where it's not awkward to drop the blade. It 1.5 jostles should get the blade to come down. So yeah, it's there. But the part that's really a full-blown nitpick here is the pain it causes trying to disengage this lock bar. So if you look at it from an angle, there's a finger cut there, cut out, so you can push the lock bar over, but it is completely flush with this line, and so there's no horizontal way to really get in there. You have to kind of jab your finger in at an angle to get it, and all that does is this little finger cutout here just makes this part right here really sharp. So I can't get in there horizontally to push it over this way. Instead, I got to jab into that really sharp, pointy thing right there. And so basically, it's really painful to disengage the knife. It's not the end of the world if you're, specifically just using this as a knife in your pocket that you might take out a couple times a day to open up a box or cut up an apple. So in that context, it's not terrible, because it's not something a normal person would do more than 2 or 3 times a day, and it's not like, you're bloodletting yourself or anything like that. It's just painful. So as far as in the context of Nehemiah owning this knife, it's terrible for me, because I want to do the 3 things. I want to, flick it open, disengage, drop it shut, and I can do 1.5 of those things well. And this last one is just really, really uncomfortable to where I just don't want to touch the knife. I don't want to use it. So I don't know. It's one of those knives where I can acknowledge this is a competent knife and it deserves people liking or maybe even loving this knife. But for me, it's never gonna find a place in my heart unless they cut a little groove out right there. That would break its visual, flair. I don't care too much about that, but unless they fix that, I'm not gonna be singing its praises on high. Now let's talk about the conclusion. Now, I mean, I guess this could be the conclusion of every knife, but if this looks like you want your knife to look, if it's the size you want your knife size to be, and you're not a fidget maniac where disengaging this and like totally ruining your thumb, it's not a big deal to you, then I can recommend this knife. I think it's a good little, front flipper that is perfectly competent and good. It's like the poor man's chamois, I guess. And that, could probably justify its existence in the industry. So I'm not going to strongly recommend this to somebody. It's just, this is speaking to you where you would have bought this regardless of what I said in the review. Well, go for it. There's no critical flaw. It's not going to fall apart on you as far as, my experience with this knife. It's going to be perfectly fine for EDC use. And I hope you enjoy it if you do decide to pick it up. If you are a fidget nut like I am, stay away from this knife. It is not fun to use whatsoever. That's all I have for you on this knife, everybody. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.